explosions in the air. Isn't that right, little Simple? Hmm?
All right.
Just
And
we're
we're
live.
live. Oh, come on.
We're gonna have to scoot here. Apologies for the late start today. For all you watching out there, we had a repairman in the house.
Show up at 10 minutes before.
Yeah.
That was.
Apparently, this was the only time he could come, and well, we had to.
No, I didn't get a choice. Yeah,
We-
it's a
the-
miracle of renting.
We had to get the TV fixed. Not the TV.
My TV is fine. It was the
The
fridge.
fridge. Because you said it earlier.
It's because I was watching the episode of that 70s show where they break the TV, like right as he entered. And so in my head, it was like, oh, this is the TV repairman.
Anyway,
I knew he was a refrigerator. Anyways, so sorry we're late. This is Composer Talk on June 6, 2018. We're going to speed through these first bits. Sorry for being late. So let's dive right in. So the first big thing,
Composer Site, not Composer Talk. That's us.
Yeah,
Composer Site's back up. Yeah.
Composer Site's back up. And it was down for a grand total of 6 days, pretty much on the dot. So, couple things here. First of all, there's been no real word on this, like why it happened, how it happened.
We haven't heard from the people at Composer Site, and I've noticed that nobody's talking about this. Like all the composition news channels that there are, besides us, like New Music Box and I Care If You Listen.
Yeah, no one seems to.
Nobody. I imagine they noticed, but.
Well, no, think about it. I mean, it's really only contest-based. That's all that website is. So it makes sense that they wouldn't. But I think if they knew about it, maybe they would be offended. I don't know. It's just... so I've got most of the thing together. There's going to be something on my DaVinci Labs website. There's going to be a subset that is basically just a up-to-date list of resources that you can go to anytime, and you can click that, and it'll be like, okay, you can go to these bajillion websites to know when some calls are, or things like that. And it'll have things such as SCI, it'll have even things as big as, the big dogs, things like, the stuff over at Baylor, the Kusavitsky deal, the Copeland House, things like that have dedicated websites. That's kind of my short-term solution to the problem. I'm still working on kind of a replacement for a Composer Site, because honestly, we need one at this point, because this is kind of proof. And I wouldn't even be offended at this point if they had given some feedback, like, oh, sorry, it went down. We were all out of the country. Everyone that had access was out of the country, and we couldn't VPN in. And even with that, they could have. So I would still accept that as an explanation. I would even accept an oh, none of us paid attention for a week. At least then we'd know.
Yeah. I was on vacation, and I forgot about it.
All of them?
Well, we don't know who runs this. Well,
we know it's associated with Vox Novus
ensemble, but we don't know who involved with that group actually has access to.
It's probably at least one or two. Yeah. I mean, it's not something like ZachDaniels.com where I am the website.
Right.
But either way.
We don't know. But yeah, it's back up, which is, ultimately good news.
It's fine. I missed several deadlines over that crap, and I'm kind of mad about it. A couple of them I had a good shot at too.
Which is why I'm telling everybody. I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again this week. Excel document. You see a call you like. Stick it in there, That's
something
my
that
approach.
I did for a while, and something I'm probably going to go back to doing. This is something I did after the first big malfunction, but I just print the call page. On Composer Site. I print it as soon as it interests me, and on my browser it's blanked out, so I know I've already accessed it. And you do that like once a week, then you've got physical things that you can go through and be like, yeah, I've answered this, or no, I need to work on this.
And I think just in general, it's a good approach to have that kind of thing organized, because also not everything is on Composer Site.
Not everything, but honestly, 90 to 95%. Everything that someone watching the show would need to enter is on there.
Probably. But if you want to apply it to one of the bigger things, and then a few more I guess if you're a member of SCI or CMS or something like that, their calls are typically done through their own site. So
they'll mention some of the bigger ones on there though. But they mention the journal.
I like to have it kind of in one place. Where I just have my list and I can check it at the beginning of the week.
Which again, that's kind of what an end goal for my version would be. Like you log in with your unique ID, Jacob Frost at IamAwesome.com.
You can have like my wish list. It's like cart on Amazon.
Well, actually, and this is cool. This is a quick sidetrack, but a good one. So my website engine Polyphony also keeps track of all my compositions. It also will, in the very near future, be holding all his compositions and 2 other composers' compositions who already have their stuff in there that I will not reveal just due to privacy and all that. But how cool would it be if I were able to, since I have the database and since his stuff is on the database, I mean, Jacob, how cool would it be if you log in and you're just like, I want to submit to this call with these 3 pieces, and Polyphony just did that for you.
Yeah.
Like, would that not be the best thing ever? You'd never miss a call.
It would be great now.
And you could even have a couple of default pieces that, if you don't respond to this and this fits the category, automatically submit this. Like, how cool.
Unfortunately, like, I don't know. It's kind of the same as with the job applications. Like, every call for scores wants you to do something different, so it might not work completely.
Well, I could have some filters in there, like have nothing with mandatory attendance, blah 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 blah.
Right. Or we've talked about this before. Yeah. Like it takes $75 out of your bank account. You don't want that happening.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like it wouldn't be any paid. It would automatically do all the free.
I saw one on Composer's site the other day where the entry fee was like €75, and I'm like, no, I'm not paying.
That's like 82 US right
now.
Yeah,
that's like 80 some bucks. I'm not paying €75.
Which one was that?
I don't remember. It said 25/75, so I think there were different fees for depending on what you're gonna do.
Okay, so like for different categories.
Still €25. That's like 30 bucks. That's still, I feel, a little on the high side.
I don't pay anything, and sometimes I almost wish I did because things like that META, Music Association of Teacher, whatever. It's a very small fee, but no one applies.
Yeah. So
if you apply and you wrote a piece of music, you win basically.
I'll submit the stuff that has fees, but I'm careful because I don't want to blow a bunch of money on stuff I have no chance of winning.
I won't blow any money on it, honestly, because and here's the way I'm thinking of it. University, who would you say should be running these calls in general? People who know what they're doing, something like a university or an
It's usually a university and ensemble. Oftentimes it's an ensemble.
Right. Yeah. Now, I can see, okay, we need to have a few bucks to get pizza for everyone that's judging and things like that.
Yeah.
I'll accept that. And for the person who collates everything for their time. Okay, I will accept that. However, that really only mandates maybe $2 per submission. Maybe. And the problem is, it's basically a for-profit thing. So if you have 200 submissions, which, trust me, 200 is something that's easily hit. I mean, I've already got 70 for my one for improv scores. And, I mean, so let's even just say 100. 100 at 5 each. 500, I can tell you personally, I can go through 100 submissions in 2 days with a committee of 4 people.
Yeah. Well,
each person just got paid $50.
The organizations will do things like paying an honorarium to judges. And it'll
I don't know. I think that's strange.
It seems
either way.
But
personal opinion.
Yeah.
You can apply to those if you want. So anyways, moving on. The American Composers Forum announces the 2018 McKnight Composer Fellows and Visiting Composers.
Yes.
All right. So Composer Fellows, my $5,000 reward. Oh, I love that thing so much. Joshua Clausen, Scott L. Miller, I'm familiar with that name, J.C. Sanford, and Tiffany M. Skidmore. What a name. Tiffany M.
Skidmore. Yeah.
That name just makes me smile. How many letters do you need? Anyways,
and then our visiting composers, they're awarded a $10,000 residency up in Minnesota I think it's something where they get to pick their own project and then they go up to Minnesota to do something. And those composers
They compose
awarded,
moose music.
Yes, Minnesota moose music. Those composers are Volker Goetze and Anthony R. Green. So check them out. You know, American Composers Forum does good things.
They do. I enjoy composers. Yeah. I actually think they're probably my favorite composer organization. Like, honestly, like, they don't do any weird stuff.
They even have their own record label. We have a couple. I did a couple minutes. I'm going to talk about a couple records that came out from ACF.
Well, their label. Seriously, I mean, they have good resources. They have a good website. You can get a lot of their benefits for only, like, what is it, $20 a year for a student?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not filled with all the SCI clutter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, SCI would be fine without the clutter.
It's enough to make you want to move to Minnesota. I actually think I'd enjoy living in Minnesota. Yeah. It seems like a nice state.
I actually, they had a job opening that was only open for 24 hours.
Because everybody wants to.
That's not why. Mm-hmm. It was. It's because state universities have a mandatory you have to post the job type thing.
Yeah.
And they found a loophole to where they could post it on Friday, but it wouldn't actually hit the servers till Monday.
The University of Minnesota?
No, it was not.
Oh, it was. Because the University of Minnesota, their University of Minnesota's composition program is actually it's very. They only have like one faculty member up there.
It's small but strong. Yeah. It's kind of it's kind of the best possible version of like what our undergraduate
was. From what I read about it, it's more humanities and liberal arts based and interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what they do up there. But
and you know that's fine. But either way, so it was closed real quick, and it was only technically open for 24 hours because they found a loophole, but it's because they already had a candidate, and he already has the job now. So,
yeah.
And it's only a part-time gig.
Right.
But either way, so state universities, they're fun. Anyways, continue.
Anyway, that's that. More news. So this past week, composer Rod Deemer and friends launched this thing called the Composer Diversity Database. Basically, just what this is an online database where you can look up composers. And it specializes in essentially having this database of composers of color and women composers. And people who come from diverse backgrounds, who maybe aren't programmed as much. And the idea behind this, as Rod Deemer and the other people behind the project have said, is for people who are doing programming to be able to go someplace and find composers to diversify their programming. So yeah, it's kind of it's kind of similar to the Women Composers Database that came out a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, I think this is good, but I think everything should be just objective. Like, it shouldn't be, we have this quota to fill of, we need to have, like, 3 men, 3 women, and 2 total of those need to be minority groups.
Yeah.
Or 3 total of those need to be minority groups. Like, I don't like having to fill quotas because I've seen what it's done on the SCI side, on the internal side even. And actually, this is, you know, I can talk about this because I'm not going to reveal any details, but there have been some shuffles within SCI leadership recently. And it's to promote diversity that they have shuffled. Unfortunately, one of the person that was shuffled negatively was someone that was highly qualified. Just because they did not fit the, we want to diversify thing. And I think that is wrong. But I think that this is a good thing because yeah, I mean, if you want to say, we're gonna showcase the music of, you know, Black female composers, you can do that now.
And a lot of, like, I mean, you've seen orchestra programming lists. A lot of ensembles simply they haven't programmed a lot of music by minority composers. And to me I see this as a tool where if you realize, we're not really, you know, representing people from these backgrounds, it's a tool to go kind of find people. I don't like the quota thing either. But I do think it's important to examine, you know, your biases as a programmer or in anything, and make sure that you're not unfairly either unfairly discriminating against people, or just because Not necessarily you actively discriminating against people, but just because people from certain backgrounds might not be as well known in the composition world.
Here's something I came across on Reddit. This I don't know. This is actually a couple weeks ago. So Reddit has several composition related subreddits. You can go find them; they're very easy. But there was someone who pointed out this is a while ago that okay, you have all this diversity happening, and you know, I mean, Mozart qualifies as a white male. We can't find any minorities really or females really until we get to the late 1800s. Sometimes even the back half of the 20th century.
That isn't really true.
No, I know, but I mean in general, I'm taking broad strokes here. And so I personally did a bit more digging on this. And I actually have come to the conclusion that if you're programming a concert of new music, like purposely new music, this database will do the trick. However, if it is a generic concert, I mean, the vast majority, not all like that Redditor said, but I would say the vast majority, I'd say something like 95% of the minority or women composers' music is going to be from 1950 and onward. Especially in the minority end. So the problem is this. Now the new music scene is being cluttered with that stuff while we're still having to pay homage to our old dead white European counterparts. And so where does the modern white male composer fit in?
Well, I think that just half of all music programmed should be new music. So
I'm a bit more extreme. I think that I think that it should be much heavier. I think it should be something like 70%. Because again, the idea of reperforming ancient music is very new. It's Mendelssohn's fault. Like he discovered Bach and rediscovered Mozart again, and it's his fault that we do this. But like the only exception to that is Beethoven was relatively replayed, but that was because just the magnificence of 5, 6, and 9 was just kind of unmatched by anyone.
Right.
But I mean, really, I'm fine because yeah, we do have some great classics. We have things like the Beethoven symphonies, lots of Mozart works, pieces by Haydn. But I mean, there's lists of 30 or 40 composers that you would say, oh, we need to protect and celebrate their music. But keep in mind, we've got people writing music that is arguably just as good today.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's not written by a 12-year-old child prodigy, but it's still very good music.
And regardless on percentage, we would both agree that there should be ensembles should play way more new music than now.
Which is why I was a fan.
50 or 70 or.
It's why I think that in Springfield, Missouri, my high school orchestra director, Andy Johnston, he has the single best strategy for running high school orchestra programs. And by the way, doesn't have the string orchestra program at a school is the least attended because it's not the band, it's not the choir, because choir just has so many people that it's going to be filled with just the parents.
Yeah.
But the orchestra concerts were always full, not just with parents and grandparents, but like you'd have kids standing in the aisles, like your classmates and all that. That's strange until you realize what this man did. It was genius. Every concert would have a couple of the greats. So yeah, okay, you've got your Haydn, your Mozart, your Beethoven, all that stuff. And every concert would also have a new work premiered. It would also have a couple of new works that weren't necessarily premieres, things by people such as Sunhi Newbold and all the rest, popular arrangements from things like Pirates of the Caribbean or Star Wars. And then there would also be at least one, sometimes two, but normally it was just one, like rock or pop tune that was arranged for string orchestra.
Right.
And that created a wonderful environment because you got to attract people with the pop stuff. You got to have the orchestra pay respects to where Western concert music came from. You celebrated current great composers, and you premiered a piece by sometimes some schmuck at a local university.
Right.
And I mean it. Some of them were, some of those pieces were god-awful. But we played them, and we played them well. And that's what's important. And I think that if more orchestra programs, not just high school, but across the board, adopted that method, we would see our concert attendance go up. I think we would see a lot of the kind of resentment for kind of the Western music tradition go away. And more importantly, I think it would fix this composer diversity problem. Because I think it would just naturally solve itself if we don't spend nearly as much time worshiping the old dead white guys.
And it might not completely fix representation for composers from minority groups.
I think it would do a huge thing.
But it would be huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And not just
if this is an 80% solution, this composer diversity database, which that's being generous, I think it's more like a 70% solution, but let's just say it's 80. I would say that thing that I described is maybe a 50% solution. Would you say?
I mean I don't know that you call this an 80%. I mean it can. It's not really a solution.
To be.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
You know, I think that breaking down museum culture and classical music, which means both programming more new music, of which we have much better representation from women composers and composers of color and all that stuff, and breaking down this expectation that when you play old music, it has to be the canon. I believe in expanding the canon. I believe in exploring composers, you know, from the olden days who maybe kind of got pushed under the rug, and some of these people are people like you know, Louis Ferenc, and Clara Schumann. Well, everybody knows who Clara Schumann is.
Clara Schumann isn't really shoved under the rug.
But everybody knows who she is, but they never play her music.
I don't know. I see a lot of it played. Maybe it's just because I've been in graduate school forever.
Well, and I think it depends on. I think it depends on the.
I think that's your jury bubble still popping.
Ensemble too. I mean, if it's for, it's the museum culture is strongest in orchestral music, and I don't. I'm trying to think if I know any Clara Schumann orchestra pieces. I don't know if she wrote any.
I think she did. It was mostly chamber stuff.
It was a lot of piano music.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, Clara Schumann was somebody who came to mind. You're right, but she's not. Everybody talks about her, but her music still isn't played as much as, you know, Robert Schumann or Brahms.
I think part of that though is she is talked about mostly for the fact that she was an example of a competent female composer. However, if you're programming a concert, and a lot of people will base it on the musicality of it, Clara Schumann's music, while competent, I personally don't find it nearly as engaging.
See, I don't think Robert Schumann's music is any better than competent. So
I feel very similar. But I'm just saying that, I mean, if you're going to pick music from that period, maybe you're going to pick some late Schubert. Maybe you're going to play.
I don't like Schubert's music either. I like his songs.
That's okay. I don't like any of his music either, but I was just making an example. Either way, but so quick question. I mean, on the museum culture thing, this is an old idea that I've had before, and I think other people have too. But I mean, what if there were a way to completely subvert the museum culture of the concert orchestra by having because I mean, for instance, we don't have these big art museums in downtown areas that focus on, oh, here's the Mona Lisa, here's all these Renaissance painters. That's not a thing. It's new stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we do have museums instead of galleries, and these museums are what protect and honor these great traditions. So, like, you go to the museum across the street from the School of Music here, and you see all the Renaissance stuff, you see stuff from Africa, you see stuff from Native America, like a lot of stuff. So my question is, why don't we have that separation in concert music? I mean, I enjoy going to an art museum just as much as an art gallery. Who's to say someone wouldn't enjoy going to, you know, I'll just say a period orchestra versus a modern orchestra? I mean, or not even versus, but I mean, both in the same. Right. Go to the art orchestra, the museum orchestra, quote unquote, on Tuesday, and then on Friday, go see the latest premieres.
Well, and I think, I mean, you can make the argument that the music of Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven that's performed, you know, by your mainstream orchestras nowadays, that if we were really, you know, it's like the historically and performed in informed performance practice movements. You know that it should be really played on period instruments with period performance practice.
Right. I mean, for instance, imagine this. Like, just to expand on this. Imagine that you have. I mean, like for instance, we have a gallery in the basement of our art museum here on campus. What if we had a standing chamber orchestra there of roughly 12 to 14 musicians that played these Mozart pieces, these Haydn pieces, these early Beethoven symphonies, up until about 4 once it got big. And you could do all that, and you could go there to listen to that stuff. And honestly, as a string player, I can go down and I can sight read most of that stuff. Most good string players can. I mean, yeah, you need to keep in mind certain performance practice, but if that's your daily gig, you're going to have no problem doing that. And honestly, you could run it nearly entirely volunteer-based because it is sight-readable music by today's standards.
See, we've talked about this before, and I don't think that's a bad idea, but I also like the temporal democracy, or what should be the temporal democracy of going to a concert and hearing music from 1800 and hearing music, you know, from 2018. I think that there's something beautiful about a music tradition where all these things can coexist, and that we simultaneously celebrate the things of our tradition in the past and the present. I don't think, and that's not a dig at period orchestras. I think that period orchestras are a good thing, you know, but I don't think it's the kind of thing where we should just move all old music to period orchestras.
No, not all old music. I'm not saying that. I mean, there are occasions where because like for instance, instead of every show at the OU Symphony having one of the old masterpieces, what if they only did one on their 4 concerts cycle? I mean, so hey, this year our period piece is going to be Beethoven 5, or the next year, it's going to be Haydn The Clock, and the year after that could be Mozart 40. The year after that could be, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to do like romantic composers, but you could easily do classic Baroque.
And you can even see them doing like a new work and an old master work, you know, on every concert or something like that. But in that case, you kind of have to program something that's going to draw in your old people audience who go to hear Beethoven. So then the period orchestra becomes a place where you can hear kind of the things lesser known works from the 18th and 19th century.
Yes and no. I agree with that part, but the old people part, actually, I used to think that was a problem, but I've gone in the past year or two. My wife and I have started going to Second Friday Art Walk here at downtown Norman, and we've discovered something. There's a lot of old people interested in this modern art. There's a lot of old, and I don't mean like the abstract modern art. I mean like actual modern, like today. That's why I hate the modern term. But as in, it was done by painters like in the past month.
Contemporary art.
Contemporary art. There we go. Contemporary art. It's been painted in the last month. Old people are actually interested in that. There's more old people, I think, than middle-aged people.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I mean, there's a lot of old people. There's some middle-aged people, and there's a lot of young people. So I actually don't think old people would be that offended by, hey, come hear this new work by Zach Daniels. Just let that stop. Okay, that was weird. My dot went off. Anyways, but yes, I mean, like, I don't think they'd be as offended as a lot of people think. Because, honestly, I would consider art, like, art, I would consider that to be a bit more, I guess, hard to get into than concert music.
I don't know. I mean, you're a musician, so of course.
No, I'm thinking back to before whenever I hated music. Like, I would have rather gone to the Springfield Symphony than go to the art museum, because I thought the art museum was a complete bore. I mean, and I'm thinking through a lot of these people. I mean, I think that we're wrongfully criticizing. I think that, I mean, the more and more, I think it's actually just, we paint this picture of, the audience doesn't let us, just to defend the fact that our directors are really the ones that don't want to.
I agree with that, but I also like to keep in mind something that my pastor told me a while ago.
Okay.
And he's talking about church music, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a new pastor and you go to a church and you want to introduce like really theologically sound, robust music that really teaches good theology and all this, and everybody at your church, grew up singing in the garden or
Right.
something else that's not necessarily that doesn't necessarily have a lot of meat to it. And they really love In the Garden, and they just love to sing it. What my pastor said was, he said, don't take away, add. You don't tell your congregation we're not going to sing In the Garden anymore. Tell them, yeah, we're going to keep singing In the Garden, but I'm also going to introduce these new hymns. And over time, hopefully, they grow to love those hymns that you introduce just as much as the old ones they're used to. That's kind of the approach I take to make music program. I agree that like I think anybody can like appreciate contemporary music. People have this thing in their head that new music is pretentious and bad, and
well, it's because there are the academic composers, which I mean, a lot of my works are academic. I'll admit that, but a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, like me, for instance, I can write an academic piece in the morning and then come back and write a good.
But it's also even some minimalist piece or whatever somebody's written lately isn't necessarily what so and so in the audience is used to. If they come to hear a concert,
I don't know about you, but my post minimalist piece did really well.
And it depends on the setting.
Yeah.
I'm
but
very
it was
much
next to things like Let It Go.
I'm very much an advocate of new music, play stuff by living composers, but I think that at the same time, I think we have to take the attitude of add, don't take away, because if you take the opposite approach, then you're going to alienate the audience that is used to Beethoven and Mozart, and they're not going to be receptive to the new music, which I think if you make them receptive to it, they can grow to love as much as the old stuff. But if they come into a concert feeling like you're just not paying attention to them anymore, then they're going to come in with that feeling of alienation.
Well, okay, and I think that can work. However, then you have the decision. Dun dun dun. Do we program Tchaikovsky or Beethoven? Right. Do we program early Haydn or late Haydn?
And of course, you have to make more of those choices if you're playing more new music, because you can't play as much old music.
So you've got to sit there and draw the line. Okay, we know the Beethoven symphonies are great, but we can only pick two. Or sorry, three. Because if you only pick two, people are going to say 5 and 9. But I mean, so if you add a third, then there's people that are like, oh, you should do 4. Oh, you should do 6.
Some of it would say 7. Some of it would say 6. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be 4, 6, or 8 probably for number 3. But I mean, just either way. So I mean, so you run into that problem. Then you have the problem of, oh, well, you guys used to play Tchaikovsky Symphony Number 4, but you guys don't anymore. And then the artistic director has the unfortunate news of delivering. Well, I mean, based on our audience reception and all that stuff, that was our least well-loved old work, so that has recently been taken out of the cycle. However, this period orchestra across the street does it.
Right.
Then that old lady's going to feel very offended that her favorite piece of all time is no longer there, and you're going to create more alienation that way potentially.
You can't make everybody happy. I also don't believe in the cycle. I think we should be trying to.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, the cycle. Like, I'm just saying because in my mind, it's like, okay, we have like 50 great old works. That's still to me, but we have 25 great.
I don't necessarily think that's going to alienate more people than just being like, well, all you old people, who don't get to hear your favorite pieces at the symphony anymore. The other thing, and this is particularly with orchestra programming, is that a lot of people don't really go to the symphony to hear music. They go to the symphony because it's a social event. and
it's both a good and bad thing. Because no, think about it. It's bad in that I mean, about half of the wealthy patrons,
right?
So I'd say people that are in like the lower row of boxes, sometimes the front half of the orchestra section. About half of those folks don't actually care about the music. But you can take that to your advantage. If they don't care about the music, we can play whatever we want.
But with them, it's sometimes not really about musical taste. It's about gatekeeping. But why are they playing all this new music? You know, they're not playing the old stuff. Like so, and at some point, you know, wealthy donors who have traditional taste, at some point, unfortunately, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. Like,
well, and that's why, you know, like my wife and I, we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're doing pretty well for ourselves for being two 26-year-olds, or I guess a 26 and a 27-year-old now. She's old, but I'm gonna die now.
Oh, you guys are old, man.
I know, right? But so we're already starting to think about, hey, you know, if we have extra money, you know, if I get a big gig, if you know something happens, because there's a chance that we're going to end up with a large sum of money at some point, just due to a lot of circumstances that have happened, and we've thought about what we would do. One of the things we want to do is, first of all, we're going to make a gift, two separate gifts actually, to Drury University, our undergraduate. Second thing is endowing a chair of some sort, so some sort of teaching position here at OU, since this was also pretty significant for us. And the last thing we thought about that we really want to do is, we haven't decided what exactly, but we want to either through a theater company, a symphony, orchestra guild, or just an arts council of some sort, we want to kind of inject our taste, not really inject our taste, but more just break down that barrier to entry to kind of get rid of that old status quo. Because, you know, we both go to a ton of concerts where, the old people are running it. We go to art galleries where the old people are running it. We go to musical theater things where, I mean, if you go to anything here in Norman or OKC, Max Weissenhofer is in charge of it, and so it's the same 27 shows on cycle. Basically anything of his that's been on Broadway lately. Oh, did I say that out loud? But, so, I mean, we kind of just want to break down that barrier, because if you have one voice of reason in there, a lot of other people will either want to join that voice of reason or listen to that voice of reason. And so that's something that we want to do. But again, that's contingent on us having money in the future, which, again, we suspect that we will. But we also want to kind of give back and kind of push back against what's kind of shoved us out whenever we were younger. And I think that's something that a lot of people should keep in mind, because it's great to sit there and say, oh, I own 3 Corvettes and a boat and 2 mansions. Well, great, but then what are you going to do for entertainment?
What are you going to do with 3 Corvettes, man? You know, like, like hook them all up with rope and drive them all up, like...
Did you say cook them all up or hook
them all up?
I was like, you're gonna cook your Corvettes?
Like I'm gonna make a tricycle out of Corvette, except it's a tri-Corvette. It's like,
which one do you sit in to drive?
Probably the front one, I would think.
Well, like, are you going 2 then 1 or 1 then
2? I'm thinking 1 2. The people on the one.
No, see, the way 2. I see it is, you sit in the back one. This is a sidetrack, but I can't help myself. So I'm imagining you sitting in a dead Corvette, just like in neutral, and you've got like some like leashes or something that like latch in control wise to the front 2 Corvettes, and they pull you.
It's like pod racing.
Exactly, it's like pod racing with Corvettes.
See, I'm
Jacob. We need to win the lottery now.
Okay. I'm thinking that all the Corvettes are running, and you somehow find a way to hook them up electronically so that you control them all remotely.
Yeah, exactly.
With one of them. Yeah. And like you get the 3 times the horsepower of a single Corvette.
That's not how horsepower works.
Yeah, you know, wibbly wobbly, sciencey wincy.
That's objectively not how it works. All right, so we're not car experts, but either way, so. That's something to keep in mind. So, I mean, a lot of these people get money and then they just go and they waste it, or they buy, like, a new hotel room in Disneyland or something. I don't know what people do with their money these days, but more people should invest in what they care about. And there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't like going to symphony because they only play the same old stuff. It's like, well, you have money. You can change that. I mean, okay, this is a small orchestra. in Springfield, Missouri. But I will give this example.
Mm-hmm.
One of the gentlemen there, actually, no, I know two of the people that were on the board there. The barrier to entry there is basically 20 grand, roughly, today. Mm-hmm. So it was about 12 when I was younger. It's about 20 right now. That's really not much. And that's not like an annual gift. That's not an annual gift. Mm-hmm. That is a one-time thing, and then you continue to funnel money as asked.
Yeah.
That's really not that much. And keep in mind, for that 20 grand, you also get a box with your name on it. You mm-hmm. get all the receptions you want. You get a voice in what the symphony does.
Mm-hmm.
Not too bad. I mean, 20 grand really isn't much. I mean, you'd have to double or triple that for something like OKC or New York or St. Louis, something like that. But, I mean, you have to imagine, I mean, that's really not horrible when you think about it. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people that have 60 grand lying around in savings.
Yeah. If you can blow, 20 grand on a new car, right? You can,
40 for something like.
Well, yeah, like a good. Well, for a Corvette, even more than probably north.
It's something like 85 or 90.
But so basically, what we're saying is, rich people, if you're watching,
and you're mad about the music,
we want your money. Like, we personally, well, I mean, I will take your money if you want to give it to me. But we, as the new music community, wants your money.
Speaking of rich people and donations, some African dude emailed to VC Labs earlier today saying that he's going to sponsor my business for $4 million. I don't think it's legit.
You just need your social security number?
No, he didn't even say that. He's like, just reply to this email. And I'm sitting there like, no.
We just need your credit card information so we can transfer our bank account over to your credit card.
Okay, let me... It's just like, these people are so desperate. Anyway, so moving on. That was a good 20-minute diversion.
Yeah, we
had fun with that. But anyway, so we got some new music stuff to cover.
Yeah.
All right.
So premieres upcoming or recent. I think both of these happened this past weekend. But two new operas. One of them premiered in Brooklyn, New York. That is David Hertzberg's opera, The Rose Elf. And the hook of this opera, because it's like every opera nowadays has to have a hook, is that it was premiered in the catacombs of the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Like, people went to a cemetery and went down, like, underground into the catacombs, and they played an opera there, which is pretty cool. The opera fits the macabre theme. It's this gruesome love story based on a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And it's actually kicking off a series of concerts that will all be held in these Greenwood Cemetery catacombs in Brooklyn. So that's a cool thing. This is an opera that I'm not familiar with this composer, but it's an opera that kind of sounds interesting to me, so I'm going to check it out when it comes out on recording. If it comes out on recording,
right?
You never know. But yeah, opera number 2 premiered last weekend. Is by Huang Ro, the composer, and David Henry Huang, the librettist, and it's called An American Soldier. This opera is based on the story of Danny Chen, who in 2011 enlisted in the army and eventually killed himself as a result of being subjected to intense hazing and racism.
Actually, I think it was hazing on behalf of racism.
The hazing was racist.
Yeah.
And the opera kind of tells his story. That was premiered last weekend at the Opera Theater of St. Louis, my hometown. But Opera Theater of St. Louis is actually a really good company.
Fox Theater, it sucks.
It's actually a really good company. I unfortunately have never had the opportunity to go to one of their concerts. But
my parents actually used to go to those on dates whenever me and my sister didn't exist yet.
Yeah. But I wish I was in St. Louis this week because I would go see this. Unfortunately, I'm not. But yeah, there's a write-up on it at New York Times. It's interesting concept. So
I think it's interesting, and honestly, this kind of also goes back to the how operas used to be, or how some operas used to be. Because obviously, you always had like the tragedies and the dramas and all that. But having kind of relevant operas.
Yeah.
Which I think is important to people wanting to attend an opera, because who wants to attend yet another Romeo and Juliet or yet another, hero's story
and
or any of that
and
stuff.
it's not that I think like everything has to be socially relevant. Like I feel like that there tends to be an expectation, but that doesn't mean that things can't be. And I think things like this do attract people. And I think it's from what I understand, the opera is very respectful towards this person. It's and writing operas that involve people who are still living, which this does because I mean his family is still around, tends to always be like a tricky endeavor, as John Adams found out. With the death of Klinghoffer, but the mother of this soldier is actually interviewed in the article, and while she said she doesn't know if she'll be able to make it all the way through the opera because of the emotions that dragged up, she supports what they've done and appreciates the respect that they've shown to the son and the family this time. So that's cool. If you get the chance, if you're in St. Louis, this would be a good thing to go see.
Yeah. And then there's nothing new music wise here locally, and part of that is because it's summer.
It's summer, yeah.
Though there is something neat. There's a bass workshop happening at OU.
Oh yeah, I just saw the Facebook post about that.
There's been posts about that for days, man.
I wasn't paying attention, I guess.
But,
I don't know. But,
yeah, so I mean that's cool. New music for not new music, but I mean it's just music for double basses. I should write a bass piece.
Slapping that you have written a bass piece.
No, I should write like a bass ensemble piece, like
double bass quartet.
I have played one of those. It was called The Clown, and we played our hearts out.
I kind of want to write a double bass quartet now.
It just sounds. Did I tell you about our name?
The Mating Whales.
The Moaning Whale. Yeah. So basically, long story short, we had a bass quartet, which is never a good idea. But we had 4 double bassists who were pretty good, and so Mr. J was like, "Okay, I'm actually gonna find you some literature," and he's like, turns out there is none, except this book of ridiculous tiny trios and quartets. So we're going through this book, and we're playing through, and we're at the district contest, and we play perfectly fine, and all of a sudden, the judge looks at us and is like, "Hey, do you guys have a name for yourselves? Like, it's impressive having 4 double basses." And then I just shout, I'm like, "We're the Moaning Whales." And then it was just like, what? Then she was like, did Andy Johnston come up with that name, our orchestra director? And this came on, this is a person from out of state. That's just like, did that man come up with this? I know he must have. We're like, actually, no. It was his mom, one of our bassist moms.
I thought you had to change it from the Mating Whales to the Moaning Whales because they wouldn't let you use that name.
Well, that was before we went into the contest.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we just explained, because basically she was listening to one of our rehearsals, and she was just like, it sounds like whales with mating calls, but none of them know what they're doing.
It's like, have you seen the 4th Star Trek movie?
Yes.
The one where they go back in time.
Yeah, and they save the whales.
The thing with the whales. It's such a stupid movie, but it's hilarious.
It's beautiful.
It's
beautiful.
Yeah.
But no, so and it was funny. She even the judge was even like, even if you guys couldn't play, I would be giving you a 1. Just because you have 4 bassists that can read music. It's just like, yeah! So we would have gone even if we just would have flubbed. Yeah. And that was really funny. And that state, it was still kind of a riot. But yeah, just having a bass quartet was nothing that good. It was things like, da 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 da. It was so stupid. Yeah. One of the pieces was actually called The Clown. I'm not making that up.
You could just play the 4-part Divisi part from Symphony Fantastique over and over again.
No, that's not even good. Like, it's fun. That's not. I don't know. Anyways, so that's a thing. That's really the only new music thing around here, and it's not even new. It's just funny because it's basses.
Flapping the bass.
All right. So recordings.
Anyway, so like I mentioned earlier, 2 new records out from the American Composers Forum label, Innova Recordings. One of these is from composer-performers Isam Rafea and Gao Hong, and it's called Life as Is, the blending of ancient souls from China and Syria. So this is improvisatory music in nature, and the instruments that these 2 people play are the oud and the pipa.
Yeah.
Which For those who don't know, the oud is like an ancient Mediterranean stringed instrument, and the pipa is a Chinese stringed instrument. It's kind of like a Chinese guitar.
Yeah.
And they're both cool instruments.
A Mediterranean one. Basically, just think of a mandolin, if you ever seen one of those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's similar to that, except it has only 3 strings.
I think the oud is lower pitched, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
But man, like I'm just saying, like acoustically speaking, it's
right.
I think
right.
the most accurate.
So this is interesting because
I listened to a little. I'll be honest. I only listened to a few seconds of each track, but it was very clear that a lot of them are basically the same soundscape. Part of that is because the instrumentation,
right,
that you just can't get away from. But I will say the thing that does interest me is the improvisatory part.
Yeah.
At some point I want to look at the music to one of these and see what the instructions are, see what the kind of guideposts are. That would be interesting. Or if it's free improv, I would also like that. But either way, I don't know. It just didn't quite catch me.
Yeah, I actually didn't have a chance to listen to this one this week.
It's good trance music.
It's
it's good trance music.
But yeah, so that, and also from Innova Recordings, the ensemble Array on Flutes, which is a flute trio, recorded an album called No Era, which includes works from Sabha Aminikia, Ryan Brown, and Danny Clay. And most of this is, well, it's described on the website as post-minimalist style, which is not a very useful label.
It's not even the most accurate phrase I would use to describe this.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it has post-minimalist trends, but to me, it almost just feels kind of like a lazy pointillistic.
Lazy pointillistic?
Like, it's not an actual term, I just made that up. But I mean, because it moves within the parts, but it doesn't do it quite as energetically as true pointillism.
And I only got to listen to a little bit of this.
So well, even that. I mean, do you kind of get that jive a little bit?
Not from the little. I mean, the little bit I listened to felt like I was interested, but that I was like, I need to hear where this goes, and then I ran out of time because. Well,
that's the problem with minimalism.
I'm gonna talk about the next record because the reason I didn't get around to listening to
this next one
as I'd like to is because I spent all the time listening to this whole album.
This one I didn't touch.
But this is another New Focus Recordings record. They come out with new stuff like every week, and this is all by a composer named Douglas Boyce, and the album is called Some Consequences of Four Incapacities. So I listened to this whole thing. It's about like an hour-long album that includes 2 single movement pieces and a multi-movement like extended work, and I really enjoyed it. What? Oh no, there's a price tag on.
No, you know why I'm freaking out. Like they should have the track list up there next to this.
Yeah.
That was poor.
Well, our viewers can't see it. Essentially, the record company is offering they're offering their entire discography for like $500, and
that's the part that
looks like But I really enjoyed.
But here's the real price.
I really enjoyed this album. It's string music. There's a string trio. There's a piano quartet. And it's very much in a modernist style. If you like, the Bartók quartets and stuff like this, you'll probably enjoy this. But I just really enjoyed it. The third movement of his Fortuitous Variations, in particular, I found very enjoyable. These pieces all have really weird names. They're called. One of the movements is called "The Dawn and the Gloaming Most Invite One to Musement." Let's see. The vastness hitherto spoken of is as great in one direction as another.
Those are such pretentious titles.
They are. And what it reminds me of, and you might not be as familiar with this music, but it reminds me of the music that's generally put under the post-rock label, which is another one of these post labels that doesn't say a whole lot. But post-rock tends to be this really, really, it draws a lot from minimalism, actually, and tends to be very concerned with like building walls of sound and repetition,
so it's like spectrals.
building to something. Not quite, no, in a very different way.
Oh.
It's like really intense minimalism, but this album is absolutely nothing like that. It's very much like atonal modernism, but the titles all remind me of post-rock bands like Godspeed You, Black Emperor, and like Russian Circles and groups like this that all have these really long, pretentious sounding titles. But it's a good record. I especially recommend the multi-movement work, his Fortuitous Variations. I thought it was a really good piece. But yeah, so lots of new stuff to check out this week.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. Mm-hmm. And again, sorry that we started.
Yeah, sorry for the
35 minutes late, but we made up for it by going over.
Yeah.
So it almost ended up being the same. But anyways, I'm just glad their fridge is theoretically fixed.
In theory, yes.
In theory, it's fixed. But yeah, either way, thank you for tuning in this week. And again, mostly new music oriented this week, but it's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
There's no tech stuff. Avid and all of them are just quaking in their boots at the side of the door to go to. That's really the only tech thing. Like, they've actually been completely silent. They haven't even responded, which is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but so that's it for this week. Catch us next week. We'll have more stuff. We'll be on time.
We hope.
And
unless
we'll
the fridge breaks again.
I hope it doesn't break. I like that. Well, actually, I don't like that fridge, but it's better than the last fridge. Anyways,
it's a fridge.
It's a fridge.
Send us and the fridge your hate mail, please, and we will see you later.
No, send our fridge positive thoughts.
That's thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers for the fridge. Fridge prayers. Dear Lord, please protect my refrigerator.